Hello, I'm John Cunningham, and welcome to another episode of the RedChip Money Report. For those of you new to the show, RedChip is an investor relations, media, and research firm focused on emerging growth companies. Our unique platform combines global multimedia with traditional investor relations, reaching investors around the world. Today's show features interviews with executives of two public companies. First up is Graphex Group Limited, stock symbol GRFX on the New York Stock Exchange American. Graphex is a global leader in midstream processing of specialized natural graphite used for electric vehicle lithium-ion batteries. We'll learn about their strategy to expand operations in support of energy transition and electrification efforts worldwide when we speak with Graphex President John DeMaio later in the show. Next up is Soligenix, stock symbol SNGX on the NASDAQ. Soligenix is a late-stage biopharmaceutical company focused on developing and commercializing products to treat rare diseases with unmet medical needs. We'll learn more when we speak with the chairman and CEO later in the show. Now, before we get to our first interview, our quote of the week. It comes from the book Small Stocks, Big Money. If you want to invest in the microcap space, buy companies, not stocks. If you buy stocks, the daily fluctuations and lack of liquidity will drive you crazy. These quotes come from Byron Roth, CEO of Roth Capital, featured in Chapter 7 of Small Stocks, Big Money. This is a book of exclusive interviews with some of the biggest players in the microcap space. Get a digital copy on Amazon today for just $18. Now let's get started with our first interview today with Graphex Group Limited.
We're here today with John DeMaio on Cinco de Mayo, president of Graphex Group Limited. John, welcome to the show today.
Todd, great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. And first off, I'd really like to congratulate you and your team at Graphex on rising to be a top 10 global producer of graphite anodes for EV and other high-capacity batteries.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
To bring our audience up to speed, why don't you tell us a little bit about the importance of your proprietary technology and how it adds value to the graphite industry, helps the world electrify this big goal. It's a pretty lofty goal of rapid EV electrification and conversion. Tell us a little bit about that in the background, please.
Sure. I think first it starts with an explanation of graphite and the role it plays in the electrification, ecosystem. So much of the focus is on batteries, of course. That is the heart and soul of electric vehicles, battery energy storage, et cetera. And batteries contain a significant amount of graphite. It doesn't get the notoriety, if you will, of say lithium or manganese, cobalt, et cetera, nickel. But graphite makes up at least 25 to 28% of the volume of a battery. So there could be 15 times more graphite in a battery than lithium, right? And as it stands now, there is a plethora of graphite in existence, if you will, on the planet, but not much of it is being mined. And that's a historic kind of a situation. So what you have now is a mismatch between the supply of graphite, particularly refined graphite, which is what we do, and I'll get to that in a second, and the demand as projected by this electric vehicle proliferation and the push for battery energy storage. So where we excel is in the refining of graphite from its raw material stage to its finished product stage to be used as anode material. And by the virtue of the fact that we've been commercially producing this at scale for over 10 years, we have a high yield production platform. We're experienced at what we do, and that gives us, I'll say, an advantage in the sense that we can produce anode finished material from a variety of sources, and we're ready to plug and play when we talk about domestication efforts in North America and beyond.
Amazing. It's an exciting time for you guys in this whole move and trend. We've seen explosive growth from Tesla and some of the other EV companies coming into their own. But right now, I'm really even more excited about Graphex' decision to establish a facility in Warren, Michigan. Even more that it's an auto parts facility that provided jobs in the Big Three region and now is shut down. How can it help gigafactories reach their goals in the U.S. to have some stable domestic supply of EV batteries?
Yeah, for sure. So, with respect to the Warren, Michigan plant, we announced that in early 22, and that was somewhat ahead of the real focus on domestication efforts. It was before the IRA, for example, before the bipartisan infrastructure law. And that was just a business decision that we made that, again, we have the experience, we have the know-how that was, as I say, born and raised in the Asian ecosystem, which is, let's face it, 15 to 20 years ahead of the rest of the world, with the exception maybe of Tesla. So we felt that we had something to bring to the table to support this electrification movement. Yes, it's a good business decision, but moreover, we want to be a foundational player in this electrification movement. I personally have been part of this energy transition long before it was called that. So it's really satisfying for me to be part of this and to see the momentum moving in that direction. So when we decided to make a plant the flag, so to speak, in North America, we had a blank page, and we considered a lot of different areas. I'm sure you're aware that there's a lot of activity in EVs in the southeast and in the middle of the country, in Kentucky, for example, et cetera. We wanted to look at Michigan because of its historic place in the automotive industry. And we found this location in Warren that, as you mentioned, it was previously an auto support facility. I think it did some kind of undercoating, but it had been dormant for a couple of decades. And some local developers had purchased the property and were starting to renovate it. The fact that it's in Warren, where GM has headquarters, where the city and the folks in Warren have seen an exodus of automotive technology, we felt that we could do well and do good by announcing and building a plant there, bring jobs back, and very importantly, bring technology, which is really a new technology, back into Michigan. So we've had discussions, and we have offers of incentives from the city, state, and local governments. I've had a discussion with the governor, with the mayor of Warren, and it's a very welcoming environment. So we're really excited about bringing that online. And like you said, it will support, it'll make a dent, if you will, in the demand picture. But beyond the plant in Warren, we have plans to expand in much larger capacities, and we're looking at sites and locations for that. So it's a very exciting time, as you mentioned.
No question about it. To your knowledge, is there any current domestic or U.S. production or North American production of these graphite anodes?
There's not any production at commercial scale at this point, right? So yes, I mean, when you look at the landscape of gigafactories that have been announced, it equates to almost anywhere from 400,000 to 500,000 tons of graphite being needed for the anode side. And like I said, commercial scale production is at zero. Sierra Resources has a pilot plant, and they're looking to expand. They've had announcements, and I think they're on their way to producing, I think it's 11,000 tons and then 45 over the next few years. But when you put that against a backdrop of 400,000 to 500,000 tons, there's obviously room for expansion. And again, we feel that our over a decade of experience allows us to quickly plug and play into that ecosystem and take advantage of the opportunity to bring jobs into potentially disadvantaged areas like Warren. And again, like I said, do well by doing good.
No, that's really, I'm sure the community is appreciative of this effort. And speaking to some of the incentives, how can the Inflation Reduction Act affect your business model now and plans to shore up this domestic supply?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, it really is by design motivational to domesticate supply chain, right? Like any legislation, it may be imperfect. Some of the timelines may be overly aggressive, and I think you'll hear that from throughout the industry. But by and large, it's moving in the right direction, and it has a lot of buy-in from both sides of the aisle, from industry, and pretty much by the consumer themselves, which is obviously the driver of this. So those incentives, more or less require the supply chain to be domesticated. And again, we feel like we fit right into that in the sense that we are ready, I hate to use the expression again, but to plug and play, right? We have proven technologies, proven procedures. We have a very strong technical bench. So we're ready to bring that expertise to bear. It's not, we're not a startup and we're not introducing new technology. So we're a relatively low risk kind of a play when you think about how do you bring, how do you do two Herculean tasks? Electrify mobility after 100 plus years of internal combustion, at the same time domesticate the supply chain. Well, we feel one of the best ways to do that is to get experienced players that are in that supply chain with experience in it to come and build out that infrastructure.
Yeah, and you guys have established quite a bit. You've got 15,000 tons. You're trying to get that capacity up to 45,000 in some of your current facilities, approximately $50 million in trailing 12 revenue. To me, you have a very compelling market cap, a real cheap valuation at this moment, trading less than 1 times sales. So what steps are you guys now taking to create shareholder value and have a strong finish to 2023?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, we do feel like we're a diamond in the rough, much like graphite itself, kind of the unsung hero of the, maybe not a hero, but the unsung, component of the battery chemistry. We've spent the last 12 to 18 months really laying the foundation, really taking the pulse of the industry, navigating some of this new legislation, right, to really understand where we can add value, where we can expedite, our value creation, not just from shareholder perspective, but really importantly to the industry itself. So we're in multiple, not only discussions, but different levels of negotiation, we'll call it, with the OEMs and battery makers on the downstream side. We're also paying a lot of attention to the upstream side. I mentioned at the top that there's plenty of graphite in the ground, not a lot of it is available. So when you couple that with the real push for domestication, or at least nearshoring or friendshoring, what we're doing on the upstream side is aligning ourselves with mining operations that are either currently producing or close to producing, that are located in countries that are friendly, either part of the free trade agreement or not countries of concern as laid out by legislation. By doing that, what our goal is and what we know is the right solution to the industry is to provide end-to-end, as we call it, mine to anode solution at scale for the consumers, for the in our case, the automakers and battery makers. What they're looking for is volume and quality production, and we represent that midstream. Now what we're doing is bolting on the upstream so that, again, it's a end-to-end solution. We want to be the easy button for graphite anode material.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, sounds like you're growing a pretty substantial pipeline. Maybe to our audience who's not so familiar with the economics, how do you bring value to a mining company or an automotive industry partner and help them create value at the end goal?
You bet. That's a really great question, because in the graphite realm, a little bit different than some of the other, more marquee metals, we'll say, where a lot of that value for, say, lithium is in the extraction process, right? In graphite, the significant part of the value, not just commercial value, but also performance value, is achieved in the midstream, exactly where we play, right? So in dollar terms, if we acquire raw materials from mining operations and at a value of X, by the time we're done and produce the anode material, it could be worth 10 to 15X, right? So there's a tremendous amount of value created in that midstream. So, when you look at the landscape again, mining graphite has not typically been uber profitable, right? And that's why there's not a lot of active mines. More are coming online, unlike mining for gold or lithium or other precious metals. So some of the mining operations are interested in coming into the midstream to access that value creation. Some of them are trying to do it themselves, right? Others are recognizing that, it might be a better play to stick to our respective knitting, right? And have them do the mining, take on, that's a handful, as you know, between regulatory, permitting, et cetera, and operational, and leave the midstream to companies like ours, but work out some kind of a financial arrangement where they can participate in that value creation. So we're leveraging our expertise and that value creation to secure some of these relationships with upstream providers. And when it comes to the downstream providers, again, it's our experience that they really value. We're pretty much a known quantity. We've been at this for 10 years. That makes us, one of the original players, basically. So that holds a lot of value for OEMs and battery makers that really need stability in the delivery, not only of volume, but of quality. And that's what you get after you've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah, I can only imagine these win-win types of relationships are key to the success and the growth of these industries, bringing all parts, having the resources in North America to do so. And so that's extremely exciting. I haven't done a deep dive study on the compound annual growth rate, but I can imagine it must be substantial in this space. Why don't you bring it home for our shareholders today, our audience that look at these opportunities and buy stocks from watching the RedChip Money Report? What's your value proposition? Why should they look at Graphex today and consider making a long-term investment?
That's a great question. I partially addressed it, I think, a little bit earlier. When you consider what society is trying to do, again, electrify not only mobility, but really electrify everything, right? Move away from fossil fuels. It can be argued how fast it's going to happen and what the hurdles are, your charging infrastructure, et cetera, range anxiety, all the terms you hear about. The thing is, it's going to happen. And even if we evolve into hydrogen fuel cells, those require batteries as well. Batteries require graphite. There really is no substitute for it, right? There are discussions about, silicon anodes. There are some significant challenges with that, and it's not going to be a near-term solution. We will see, for example, anodes are currently 95 to 99% graphite right now. We may see that trend come down a hair because of introduction of silicon additives, lithium titanium oxide, et cetera. But the percentage of natural graphite will actually go up over time. So again, almost unlimited demand, kind of restricted supply, and not that many players that are experienced in refining it into the anode material that's necessary. So we're not, because we've been at this for so long, we have our own IP. We're not beholden to any government, any other company for licensing, et cetera. So we are ready to go. I always say we have ability with agility, and we're more than ready. We've already announced that we're moving into North America. We're going to do the same in Europe. So we're really a ground level play, I believe. Why I'm so excited, why I joined the company, quite frankly. We're bringing picks and shovels to this next gold rush, and graphite is really just now coming on the radar as being kind of the next, lithium, if you will. Right now, it's not commoditized, it's not traded like a commodity. We may see that change somewhat, and whenever you have a supply-demand imbalance, you're going to see, A, more attention, and B, more growth potential.
Amazing, John. Sounds like a fantastic recipe for success. I mean, supply and demand speak volumes, and this is an effort globally to electrify the world. I think the embracement, I mean, you just look at the road, you see how many new electric vehicles are coming online, how many, even the big three autos have dedicated and set cutoff goals that are quite lofty to be fully electric. So this is a perfect timing for you, a kind of a perfect storm. And I certainly see in your valuation today, there's a great potential upside. So thank you for sharing this story with us today. I really am excited to see your year unfold here and see another factory come online in the U.S.
You bet. I like to say, Todd, that electrification is inevitable. Electrification needs batteries. Batteries need graphite. And when you think of graphite, think of Graphex.
Now, to get more information on Graphex Group Limited, visit grfxinfo.com. You'll see research reports, fact sheets, presentations, and the latest videos. It's all free. You can even subscribe to email alerts to stay on top of the latest news. You can also call 1-800-RedChip to speak to a specialist if you have any questions. We also have a free weekly newsletter you can subscribe to at redchip.com, featuring emerging growth companies like Graphex Group Limited. In addition to our newsletter, you can also order your copy of Small Stocks, Big Money. This is a book written by RedChip CEO, featuring interviews with some of the biggest players in the microcap space. Order your copy at Amazon.com today for just $18. Now let's move on to our next interview today with Soligenix.
Chris, great to meet you. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Soligenix, a late-stage biopharma specializing in developing and commercializing products to treat rare diseases with unmet medical needs. Chris, give us a brief overview of your pipeline.
Sure. Our focus is really orphan and rare diseases, areas of unmet medical need. We really look to areas in oncology and inflammation, which we have late-stage assets that are in phase 3, as well as what's I think unique about Soligenix, we have a separate public health solutions business segment that's been funded entirely by the U.S. government to date, in excess of $80 million, focused on heat-stable vaccines for emerging infectious diseases, biodefense, as well as a COVID-19 vaccine. So quite a robust pipeline for a company our size.
Soligenix successfully completed its phase 3 study for Highbright, and you're now preparing for an important FDA meeting to discuss the design of a second pivotal phase 3 study, Chris. And what can you tell us about the statistical significance of the results of that first phase 3 study?
Highbright is our late-stage therapy. We focus here on a disease called cutaneous T-cell lymphoma. And what we do with Highbright is we apply Highbright to the skin, and then we apply state visible fluorescent or LED light to shrink the lesions on the skin. As you've noted, we have demonstrated statistical significance in a first phase 3 clinical trial, very well received, published in JAMA Dermatology, and the FDA is now looking for a second phase 3 study that we're in the process of speaking with them about designing, and we hope that we'll have clarity on that design shortly and be able to initiate that study before year end.
You also have late-stage assets targeting head and neck cancer as well as Crohn's disease, plus a phase 2A study in psoriasis that is actively enrolling patients. What can you tell us about these programs, Chris?
Sure. We focus on the oral mucositis and head and neck cancer, as well as pediatric Crohn's disease. These are separate molecules, different molecules. One is an injectable known as SGX 942 for oral mucositis and head and neck. And the other for pediatric Crohn's is an oral medication called beclomethasone dipropionate. Our research name is SGX 203. There we've generated a lot of good data around both of these programs. And where these programs are right now is we are looking for additional funding, namely through partnership. So in a number of discussions with potential partners across both those programs, we'll see if we do get the partnership or not. You know, I don't talk about those until we actually have something signed, but a lot of activity going on there. And then the program in psoriasis that you noted is an active program. This uses the same ingredient that is in the Highbright, and it's also treated the same way, applying the drug, which we call research name SGX 302 for psoriasis, to the psoriasis lesions or plaques, and then the visible light shrinks those lesions or plaques. And we've already demonstrated positive proof of concept in a phase 1/2 study in psoriasis, so we know the drug works. And we are now moving to enrolling in a phase 2A study where we're looking to just look at different ways to treat, to optimize the treatment in psoriasis. And we expect data for that study by the end of the year.
Chris, that is an impressively diverse array of activities your company is involved in. Tell us how large the addressable market opportunity would be for your specialized biotherapeutics business segment.
Across specialized biotherapeutics, approximately $2 billion in global market potential. This is driven a lot by psoriasis, which is a much larger indication, as you would imagine, not only in the U.S. but worldwide. That's in excess of 1 billion. And then the other programs we have, like high-bright and cutaneous T-cell lymphoma and pediatric Crohn's disease, as well as the biodefense, the public health. These are all markets that are several hundred million in global market potential each. So I think quite a nice commercialization pipeline as well moving forward, if and when we get these drugs across the finish line with the FDA.
Chris, let's turn now to a second business segment for Soligenix, this one targeting public health solutions, and it has been funded, importantly, primarily through government grants. Tell us more.
Sure. As you noted, this is funded by the government in excess of $80 million to date, and it really focuses on heat-stable vaccines for emerging infectious disease, biodefense, and what I think is intriguing there is everyone now is quite familiar with COVID vaccines and Pfizer and Moderna's vaccines that required strict freezing for storage, for distribution. Our vaccines do not require that. So we can now have a vaccine that we can ship worldwide if need be. We have data in excess of 1 year that shows that we can store our vaccines at over 100 degrees Fahrenheit and they maintain their activity, zero degradation. So very important. And we are looking at these in areas like Ebola, Marburg virus, which you're hearing a lot in the news right now, COVID-19, as well as biodefense like a ricin vaccine. So quite a lot of potential here around this heat stabilized platform for the vaccines. And the nice thing, as you noted, it's funded by the government, right? So that's a level of validation. Government funding and getting those grants and contracts is quite competitive. So you're competing with a lot of other academic institutions, other companies and scientists, and we've been able to have a nice level of success there in securing that funding. So that has helped us really move the programs forward in lockstep with the government, but also build out a more robust pipeline than you would typically see for a company our size with multiple shots on goal to mitigate risk, a lot of financial portfolio. So I think a nice aspect there, and also that government funding does help us manage our burn rate at times, offsetting burn and extending cash runway. So that's been very helpful for a small business like Soligenix as well.
Let's turn now to your management team. Of course, it's so important for any company, and especially a smaller cap company. Introduce us to yourself and some of the key players on the Soligenix team.
Sure. As you said, quite a bit of experience in developing drugs across many different therapeutic areas, many in the orphan rare disease space, areas of unmet need where our focus is. And we're also complemented by a very strong board of directors with very good experience across both business, finance, drug development. My background, I've been in this industry for over 32 years now. I started in big pharmaceutical companies in areas from manufacturing, operations, regulatory affairs, interacting with the FDA, and then ultimately went and started in small startup companies and building and growing startup companies, co-founded one myself that I had a nice exit strategy with and a success in advancing the program, and then ultimately joined Soligenix, tasked with building out the rare disease pipeline. So that's what I've been doing for the last 16 years and building a strong management team behind that. Many of the individuals with me now, I've worked with in previous lives in other companies and brought them along with me. So I know what they can do. I know their experience and they know what to expect from me. So we could really move things forward very quickly with expertise in different therapeutic areas, whether it's medical, clinical, regulatory, project management. That's really allowed us to advance the company and really be able to move the pipeline forward to where it is today. I think most notably, if we look to the board side of the company, we have some very good experience, not only on the development of rare diseases and orphan diseases, but also in commercialization. Most notably on my board is Dr. Jerry Zeldis, who was the Chief Medical Officer for Celgene Corporation for many years before retiring. I recently added Dr. Tim Cote, who is a regulatory expert. He was at the FDA and the office director for the Office of Orphan Products. So his focus was orphan products and rare diseases, where he worked for many years. He signed about 1,400 orphan drug applications over his time. So a good regulatory presence, FDA presence and experience there. And on the commercialization side, Miss Diane Parks, I added a few years ago, that spent essentially her entire career commercializing in the rare disease space in a number of very well-known companies. So again, I think we're complemented by a strong board in addition to the management team here at Soligenix.
Chris, I'd like you to take a moment to wrap everything up into an essential value proposition. Why should investors take an interest in Soligenix right now?
I think when you look, it's a combination of the risk profile and diverse pipeline, right? And I think for us, with Highbright already achieving success in a phase 3 study and statistical significance, and having to essentially replicate that in a second study increases the probability for success extremely well. And I think that in and of itself is an important value proposition given where our market cap and stock price is today. But then behind that, we have a number of other programs all generated positive data in diseases that we're developing. So proof of concept is there, biological activity is there, and now it's just advancing those through the development pipeline. And as I noted, with the public health, that's a nice added piece and upside or dimension to the company, where you now have multiple heat-stable vaccines moving forward with government funding that allows us to advance multiple programs, multiple shots on goal to mitigate risk. But I think the key, as I said, are late-stage assets that have already demonstrated statistical significance in the diseases in which they're looking to treat, and we're extending that. So I think that is an important element whenever you're looking at drug development, biotech, at companies that you're investing in is, what data have they generated? Have they generated disease population that they're looking in? To what effect? And is it a clear path forward? And for us, it is, because we treat rare diseases, orphan diseases, where there is not that typical competition you would see in large disease indications. And many times we're the first or in a unique position to come to market in these particular diseases, like cutaneous T-cell lymphoma.
It's an amazing story, Chris. Thank you for sharing it with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, to get more information on Soligenix, visit SNGXinfo.com. You'll see research reports, fact sheets, presentations, and the latest videos. It's all free. You can even subscribe to email alerts to stay on top of the latest news. You can also call 1-800-RedChip to speak to a specialist if you have any questions. We also have a free weekly newsletter you can subscribe to at redchip.com, featuring emerging growth companies like Soligenix. In addition to our newsletter, you can also order your copy of Small Stocks, Big Money. This is a book written by RedChip CEO, featuring interviews with some of the biggest players in the microcap space. Order your copy at Amazon.com today for just $18. Now let's recap the companies you met today. First, you met Graphex Group Limited, stock symbol GRFX on the New York Stock Exchange American. Graphite is a critical component in the batteries that are powering the rapidly growing EV and renewable energy markets, comprising up to 99% of the anode material and up to 25% of total battery mass. As one of the world's largest and most experienced graphite technology companies, Graphex is uniquely positioned as a foundational contributor to the future of energy. To learn more how Graphex is capitalizing on this position, visit grfxinfo.com. Then you met Soligenix, stock symbol SNGX on the NASDAQ. Soligenix is a late-stage biopharmaceutical company offering a robust pipeline of multiple fast-track and orphan-designated products with the potential for significant commercial returns of approximately $2 billion in global annual sales. The positive, statistically significant results achieved in the company's phase 3 study of Highbright have been published in JAMA Dermatology, and Soligenix is now preparing to meet with the FDA to discuss the design of the second confirmatory phase 3 study. Learn more about this exciting opportunity by visiting SNGXinfo.com today. Again, if you have any questions about any of the companies featured on today's show, call us at 1-800-REDCHIP or email us at info@redchip.com. In closing, remember, while small caps can provide significant gains, you must be prepared for the downside. Small cap stocks are among the most volatile asset class. Some of the companies featured on this show are RedChip client companies, and we may own stock in these companies. So please always read our disclosures at redchip.com. Thanks for being with us today. We'll see you next week with some new exciting emerging growth company.